So I'm going to play this video once all the way through, let you take a look, and then we'll analyze it. All right. If only that's what your life was like. So let's first again look what we want to see from the heels. And I know that her positioning is not exactly the same as what we advocate for our high school kids, but that's part of the what we're talking about here, right? What our high school kids need is not necessarily what a freak needs, but the positions and the angles are the same. They just can't push out of this angle. So again, first thing we want to see those heels pushing back into the track first, and seeing the hips move first before we see the feet come out. We want to start to see displacement here before we start to see all this weak stuff. See what I'm saying? See how her hips are moving before you see this come out. When kids step out of the blocks, what you see is in pull out is you don't see the hips start to travel first, displace first. The first thing that happens is the foot comes out, and then they just stand up. The hips are moving first. So what we're going to look for in this part, we want to see this foot come out low. And so these first couple steps are the shins parallel to the ground. The first couple steps, the shins should be parallel. We should not see this looping heel thing, and we should not see this casting out. But first, so what we call is getting into the middle post. Here, mid post. Things are lining up, traveling the direction we want to go, looking for that big, violent, so low heel recovery, big open split of the arms, just like we talked about before with the yellow arrows. Big split of the arms, elbow up at the shoulder, open up, big split between the thighs. But what I want you to look at here for a second, I want you to look at how far she travels, her displacement on the first step. She didn't just she uses the blocks as a launch pad to fire herself out like a cannon, violently and explosively, hitting the positions along the way, taking all of this coordination we talk about and put it together. Because remember, stride length or displacement, how far the body travels, forward, upward, whatever, however you're measuring it, it's measured from for how far your hips travel from toe off to touchdown. I can overstride and look like I have great stride length, right? Of course, that's going to come at the expense of frequency. We want optimal displacement. So just watch how far she travels. And there her toe hits the ground. Our kids won't do this. And why don't they do it? One, because we don't approach training speed from the standpoint of what she just did. Apply a large amount of force in a small amount of time and result in optimal displacement. Look where her foot is. It's underneath her hips. It's not out in front of her hips, where our sprinters kids often land when they lack skill. She has strength. She can overcome inertia, overcome her body weight, overcome that resistance, and still execute. Right? And that requires large amounts of power. Right? What is power? Power is the intersection of speed and strength. We're not trying to create bodybuilders. We're trying to create neuromuscular adaptations so we can be explosive in this regard. Now let's look at, as she keeps going, let's look at her shins. You look at this. Here she is at the high post. Now you look at this left leg as it comes, well, first let's look at two things. So we call this like a hard scissoring action here. Driving the thigh and driving this right leg down and back and driving and pulling and scissoring this recovering leg through. But watch, again, what athletes do. They want to just, they usually put the foot out, drop the toe so it lands out in front. When they get to here, it's the difference between being a striker and a lander. Your landers are kids who, whatever stride they're taking, they wait until the foot makes contact with the ground before they push or until they react off the ground. They wait till the foot hits the ground before they react. That is not fast. You cannot do that. What we're trying to do here is quickly push as hard as we can for as long as we can, and then quickly reposition. This is what she is. She pushed as hard as she could for as long as she could. Now she's repositioning so she can strike the ground and push as hard as she can for as long as she can, and then reposition and push as hard as you can for as long as you can. During early acceleration, it's more horizontal. As you come up, it's vertical, but optimally you should be able to get 50% of your maximum velocity in the first two steps. And there's about 80, optimally 80% by the 8th step. Is that happening here with our kids? I don't know. I don't have the equipment to measure that. But look at this split. Look, repositioning. Watch this leg travel back. Watch this leg travel through and the shin stays parallel. See, look how far that leg is traveling hard back to the ground. And then she's, full support, and this shin is parallel. She's driving and violently driving out. Left shin is parallel. It's not looping up. The heel is not kicking up and coming around, and you don't see the toe, her losing control of her lower leg and the toe coming out. Stays low. Push as hard as you can for as long as you can. Reposition. Strike the ground as hard as you can for as long as you can. Shin still parallel or coming down low. Repeat, 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 repeat. Now another sort of additional technique or skill that we can add, which most of my kids are not very good at, and I have not, I would say, done the most wonderful job of figuring out how it best works for them, is like Vince Anderson's progressive acceleration ladder, which dictates stride length for X number of strides that will equal a certain time. So remember, try to push our way. It's basically the acceleration version of a wicket drill. And so as you can see here on the track here, again, these may be her hurdle marks, but it's the same difference. You have this chalk marks. And so what we're looking at her to do, athletes to do, is push past the chalk mark so that your hip makes it to the mark. So as a coach, that's what you're looking for, is see their hips land there. So we're pushing as hard as we can, trying to get there. And this is how we as a coach, can gauge. And so there she is at touchdown. Here's the tape. Right, her hips are pushed past. And so you have different spacings for different times and put them out on the track. Again, here she's pushing out. And it just forces you to keep your power output high. So if you're doing something like this and you say you can't, really accurately time 2 steps or 5 meters, and you've got a bunch of kids going, you just put the chalk down and you say, well, if you can't push, you're pushing to the line, now you're not pushing the line. Well, you're not expressing speed anymore. We have to end the practice. Now, of course, what happens in the acceleration is when you start at these slower paces earlier in the season, see, kids like to overstride and they don't get their foot down fast enough when they come out in the first couple steps. So what happens is they overstride, they go too far in the first few steps of this thing. They're pretty proud of themselves. Then, let's say you're doing 15. The first third, they're over the line, pushing too far. Then all of a sudden, the second third, you find that they're on the line. And then in the last third, they're not on it anymore. They're behind because they're not pushing. And so again, they don't understand the rhythm. There's a million different things. So, and that's what we're going to get to in the next analysis video. We've gone over what you have to do to get your kids to even be able to have a chance by getting them set up properly in the blocks. I've tried to reconfirm how important block setup is and being able to get in this position. Now let's look at the real world. Let's look at some actual kids coming out and address, well, okay, well, what do I do in practice then? If they're terrible and we can't do 30s, how do I teach them to push specifically? So go to the next video. We're going to get into that. And of course, post your